Hello, CTA family. Welcome. I just want to say that your presence in this space is valued, and we look forward to our conversation tonight. My name is Camille Butts. I'm from the Association of Colton Educators, and I will be guiding you through today's Tuesday Takeover titled Unapologetically Black, a conversation about our history, our present, our future. In honor of Black History Month, you're joining us for a multi-generational conversation with CTA Black women educators about their educational journey, why they became educators and activists, what obstacles they faced, and where they found healing and support. We start off all CTA events with a land acknowledgement, so I encourage you to go to native-land.ca, or if you happen to know what Indigenous land you reside on, and make sure that you honor that land. I personally am paying respect to the Tongva people and all Indigenous people, past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in the homeland and throughout their historical diaspora. So once again, I encourage you to do the same. I want to start us off with a brief history lesson. By trade, I am a history teacher, but it won't be as long as an 80-minute live session. Before Brown versus Board of Education, there was a thriving union of Black and African American educators known as ATA, or the American Teachers Association. After integration and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, a financially broke NEA, or the National Education Association, was bailed out by a merger with ATA. This merger had mixed results. The most deleterious was the drastic reduction in Black and African American educators and the removal of ATA's identity. Despite NEA bylaw 31G, encouraging ethnic minority educators to be better represented in NEA and by proxy CTA, we have not reached proportionate representation of Black and African American educators. Despite this, we are joined today by a group of powerful agents of change that identify as Black and African American. We are gathered to hear their stories and honor Black history, and especially Black History Month. Let's meet our panelists for today's Tuesday Takeover titled Unapologetically Black, a conversation about our history, our present, our future. At this time, whoever first wants to introduce themselves, let's get this show on the road. Everyone that's in attendance, you are about to be blown away by the amazing group of people we have here. Our first question as they introduce themselves is, why are you an educator? Feel free to say hi, who you are, and why are you an educator?
Good afternoon. My name is Racinda Thomas, and I teach in Oakland. And I've been around CTA probably since 1990 or 89, with state council. But I was an educator because of my mother. I'm a second generation educator. She was involved in the Oakland Education Association, but she was not involved with CTA as a leader. But I had mentors that brought me in to the leadership. And so this is why I'm here. But I'm also a teacher and a teacher leader because I just believe in power. I just believe in change. Thank you. I'll pass it to the person on the right of me, which is Shelly Gupton.
Thank you, Racinda. Hello, everyone. That's okay. My name is Shelly Gupton, as she said. Hope you can hear me okay. I am a child of the 60s, growing up in the Bay Area, but my parents did a really good job of trying to keep us away from all the stuff that was going on in the Bay Area. And I kind of grew up thinking that was probably not the best thing. I wish that I had gotten a little bit more of a taste of it. But I love school. And so I just knew that, since I have educators in my family and since I love school and loved going to school, that I would be the best teacher ever. And I had to be a teacher. That's what I just kind of decided, that I had to be a teacher. And so I spent, the next few years of just kind of doing all those little things that a pre-teacher would do, going, babysitting, going to, helping with summer school programs and anything that I could get my hands on that kind of got me involved in, working with kids, because I was destined to be a teacher, of course. And then after, even to the point of doing group home for a semester, because I just had to be involved with kids. And then, of course, after college, there's always this period where you go, why are you even thinking about teaching? So I went into private industry and and couldn't stand it. And so 5 years later, came back to get my credential and began teaching. And that's where I've been for the last 25 years as an educator. And I'm going to pass it on to Erica.
Actually pretty perfect, because I think my story is a mix of both Rosenda and yours. So it's pretty perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Jones. I am a mostly kindergarten teacher, but I've done K through 5. And I am second generation as well. My dad was a teacher, also very active in NEA. And I heard my whole life, basically, whatever you do, don't become a teacher. So I didn't. So I went into international business, and I hated every single day of it. And I just wanted to change the world. And so I finally, luckily, I figured it out pretty quickly in my 20s and went back to school, got my credential, and I have never looked back. And I love being a teacher. I will pass it over to Angela.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Normand. I'm a special day class teacher, so education specialist for middle school. And I had absolutely zero intentions on becoming a teacher. I thought I was going to be a social worker, actually. I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps, and coming out, I used my GI Bill money to go back to school, and had a session with one of the counselors, and he said, just have a feeling about you and teaching. And I was like, no way. So yeah, about 3 or 4 more of those, counselors who kind of stepped in to help guide my way. And here I am 16 years later and loving every minute of it. So that's my story. I'm going to pass it to Estella.
Thank you, Angela. Hello, folks. I'm Estella Wima Church. My pronouns are she, her, hers, uso. I feel like there's a lot of reasons why I became a teacher. I was also that kid that absolutely loved every second of school and can't imagine not being in school. But I would say it comes down to 2 main reasons. One, there were a lot of teachers in high school who really took care of me and made sure that I crossed the finish line and got into college. And I truly just felt like there was no way to repay those folks other than to build on their legacies. And so I promised one of my mentors, she served for 36 years. I promised her I would do everything I can to get to 37. So I'm trying. And the other thing is I actually planned on going into policy or law for education. And at the time I was college counseling for Gear Up. And one of my students, I was filling out my master's applications while he's finishing up his college applications in the college center. And he was like, you know what, miss, you should be a classroom teacher. And I was like, nah, stop it. And he was like, no, miss, for real. Like, if you, like, imagine if you had all of us every single day instead of just checking in with us, a couple times a week or, a few times a month. I feel like I would have gotten a lot more out of that. And a couple of my kids were in the college center with me, and they were like, yeah. And so I was like, okay. And I threw those applications out and switched my intent for graduate school and went ahead and applied for my credential. And that's, so I've been in the classroom now for a little under a decade, and we'll try to hit that 37. I will pass it to Miss Cecily Meyer Cruz.
Thank you, Estella. That's and all the stories that are being told. It does give me hope for all the young leaders that are out there today. Hopefully, hearing these stories and then finding your purpose. I do feel like I was destined. My name is Cecily Meyer Cruz. I'm a sixth grade teacher in LA Unified, and a parent of a fourth grader in my district also. Oh, and I'm the president of United Teachers Los Angeles. I've been teaching for 26 years now. I started teaching when I was 21. In Compton. So I was a CTA member first. And I think back to like, where did this love of teaching? I grew up, I'm an only child. So I liked talking to my dolls. And I also love school and everything school related. So I also used to talk to my dolls and get them in line to get ready for school. So I say that to say, when I became a teacher, and I've taught elementary and middle school, I feel like I'm a facilitator of knowledge. So I do believe that I can facilitate spaces of learning, but in the structured sense, I actually want students to have a voice, to be able to say what they want, and me as an educator be vulnerable to accept what they're saying and build upon that curiosity and that knowledge. I miss teaching every single day, especially now. And the other thing that I would say is it's a marriage of education and activism. And I try to go back to say, like, where were the foundational roots of activism? And I think being a teacher's assistant and fighting for our break, and then becoming a teacher and having to fight for a paycheck down in Compton when they didn't want to pay us, and they said come back on Monday, and we were like, we're going to sit in on Friday until you cut those checks. And so that marriage of the two, and being able to build power in both your field, your craft as an educator, and exuding power with colleagues to build collective action. So I'll pass it to Penny.
Good afternoon, everyone, or is it afternoon? Okay, I'm going to see how to summarize mine. I came from a family of educators. My mother's family, they had educators, and they were really kind of cocky. They were teachers, and they were the best family. So they say that, you know, we're the best family, and we, you know, teach the best and everything like that. And then my dad is a politician here in San Diego. But let me tell you, same thing I tell my daughter. So who is it, Erica, or someone said their parents said, do not become an educator. I tell my 17-year-old daughter, you're not going to be an educator. But, you know, we'll see what happens with that. I went to school for business, undergrad for business, and I was going to be a business exec in a Fortune 500 company. Came back here, was working on my MBA, started subbing with my mom, who worked in juvenile court and community schools. I love the babies, but I grew up with these babies because my mom would adopt kids into our family. We always had someone in our household. We were always going and dropping off groceries. We were always going and giving money. So that was our life. So between that, her doing that, my dad being a politician, and I always had a strong community support system, because I was bused. I'm a child of the 60s also, bused out to school for integration purposes. But every day, my mom felt that it was important that we go to African American school. And so I loved my teachers at African American school. And that was the US organization and the NIA organization. And so I felt so strongly about that. I love those teachers, but I didn't want to be a teacher, but I wanted to pretend teach. So I guess it was in me anyway. And with juvenile court and community schools, I could never work in the institutions. Every time I go there, I feel like I want to free the babies. I see them walking with their arms crossed like this, and it just makes me sad. So what I said is I'm going to work with the ones who get out of the system, and so well, out of detention. And so when they get out, or if they're abused, neglected, runaways, homeless, or whatever, then we get to work with them within the community schools. So within this job, it's really unique. I've been teaching for 30 something years, 33, I think it is. I get to be a social worker, a counselor, an educator, and activist, because I have to fight for the rights of my students. It's hard now virtually. I'm not going to complain about it, because at least I'm able to do something. I got my first vaccine 2 weeks ago. I'm getting ready to go get my other one. And then I plan to go out and go look for my babies, because I'm losing them. So that's about it, I think. Thank you. Oh, and I am going to choose, let's see here. What about, let's see.
I think I'm the last one left.
Okay, then go ahead. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. I am Dr. Tamisha Brame Carter, and I am a high school physical education teacher, PE. So I became a physical educator because the one subject that I loved in school was getting outside to play. And so I thought it was super cool that my PE teachers could come to work in sweats and shorts and sneakers and play outside all day. And I was the only girl with 8 brothers, and playing was something that I did regularly. And so I thought, well, I can make money doing this. This is the coolest thing in the world. And as I got older, I figured I don't want to play outside all day. I want to use my verbal skills to fight the power, because there was enough injustice to go around. So I thought I was going to go into law, got into poli-sci classes, and said, no, thank you. I want to go outside and play. And so I became a physical educator. And in education, there is still enough power to fight. And so I use my passion, both of my passions, for law and my passion for being outside, it's both coupled together. And I became a union leader, and I use those skills to ensure that our students and our educators have everything that they need to be successful as we live on this earth. So here I am sharing my story with you all. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone that shared out those messages. And I got feedback that said there is no one path to being in education. Second grade Camille that decided to be an educator definitely didn't know of activism that many of you talked about. And that is a great segue, because we're now going to be trying to figure out why all of us are activists. Because anyone that's tuned in to right now, you're an activist. You might not know it yet, but you are. So I'm asking everyone that's here with us, why are you an activist?
I can start.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Rosinda. I can wait after you. You go right ahead.
Well, okay. Well, mine is, I was thinking, and I realized, I think my real activism started when, and I'm aging myself, when I was in middle school, or we called it junior high school. And I was in Berkeley, and the school was called Garfield. And at that point in time, Martin Luther King was killed, well, assassinated. And we were in an uproar. We were angry. There was some rioting on a lower level. And, we started fighting for our rights at that point and saying what we didn't want to do. We were talking about, these are students. We formed a Black Culture Forum, and we want to do a sit-in. My mother said, you're not sitting anywhere but inside of a classroom. And I was trying to make her understand what this was about. And she was busy talking about, the South and what happened. And I said, well, they're basically synonymous. So I think at that point in time is when I really started being an activist and looking at issues. And I started as a youngster, got involved in SNCC as a child and NAACP. So I think that my activism starts there. So it's ingrained in it. It's in my blood. So I'm going to go Cecily because she's on my left this time. I start on my right. So Cecily.
Thank you, Rosinda. Yeah. I guess, I would say that I always wanted to speak up for my friends and always was a fierce protector of my friends. So I feel like I've been speaking up for a long time. But in 1989, the United Teachers Los Angeles folks were on strike. And I was an 11th grade student at Los Angeles Center for Enriched Studies. And I jumped the fence to walk with my teachers. And I remember Marion Collins, my principal, was yelling at me. Like, I think she said, like, get your ass back over the fence. And I was like, no. And she's like, we're going to give you some demerits. And I was like, call my dad, and I, was walking with the teachers and, and I had this sense of like, the teachers are fighting for us and they're fighting for not only their rights, but they're fighting for our rights too. And I remember getting called in the principal's office. My dad was there, and my dad was a frequent flyer at the school because there was a lot of injustice happening. So my dad was always there. And so Marion Collins was like, we gave her demerits and she jumped the fence. And I think she thought my dad was gonna like get mad or something. And my dad just looked at me and said, Cess, do you believe in what you were doing? And I said, yeah, they're fighting for us and we should be standing with them. And so then he just looked at the principal and said, so there will be no demerits because she was doing what was right. So, and like the principal was like, what? And he was like, this meeting is over. And so, like, I do feel like I embody my dad a lot. And, I think that started my road to activism, to really speaking up and not taking no for an answer, because there's always another way. And that's how we build collective power. And that's how we fight for the rights for the least of these. And so when I look at my students and when I look at the folks that we're building with, who are our people. And I think that our people, or my people, are the people that are going to be down to be in the struggle. So I'm going to pass it over to Angela.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a similar answer for this one, which is probably all of us. We're going to say we think we've always been activists. But I can tell you what started my activism in CTA. And I come from a district where I think I'm still one of 3 or 4 Black educators. And out of about, 450, 475, something like that. So I'll be the only one at my school. And, there were a lot of conversations about the Black and brown students that just wasn't cool, right? And so I interceded in this specific, in this particular conversation where the educators were saying that, oh, well, what did you expect from them? They live over there in the apartments. So like that's categorizing, right? I mean, a whole bunch of stuff. This is unapologetically Black, so I'm about to be Black. And it just really set me off, because amongst all of the obvious things, you're telling me that whenever a kid steps into your room and you look at their address and you see where they come, then you set the bar this low. Mm-hmm. My passion in the conversation led me to the principal's office, where I was accused of being, help me with the words right now. Somebody, you know what I'm talking about.
Let me guess, aggressive.
Well, that too, but
threatening,
subordinate. Stop creating a hostile work environment.
There it is, Tanya. I was accused of creating a hostile work environment. And I was like, oh no, They're creating the hostile work environment and the hostile conditions in which these students have to be taught in. So I really took this matter, and you know, I asked to be more involved in our local association by really beefing up our human rights, you know, team, so to speak. I fought so that we could get unconscious bias training at our school. And much love to those 17 educators out of 500 who joined me on a weekend for 15 hours of incredible training that completely changed their lives. So then at least I had 16 others who were with me. And then some things started changing. Like that led to a task force to really look at situations now. You know, I can't tell you what's happening right now over there because I've been out of the classroom for a year and a half to serve in my current capacity. But that's how it started. It started with making sure that our students are adequately cared for, are listened to, are respected, and are taught in the manner in which they deserve to be. So I saw Tanya come on, and we haven't heard from Tanya. We don't know her story. So I'm going to pass the mic to Tanya so that she could tell us how she became an educator and why she's an activist.
Thank you. I came in. I love that story of Cecily. That's like one of my favorite stories. I wish I could jump a fence right now. That's not going to happen. Good afternoon. I'm so blessed to be here in this space with just women who I admire and respect, and just learning to hear their stories. That always fills my cup. I'm a middle school teacher in San Jose. I teach language arts and social studies. And how did I get into this work? Well, I would say that I've always been an activist in my own right, and that it's also just in my DNA. My grandmother was my first example of being an educator and community organizer. She was always fighting for others. She was actually, I'm originally from Iowa, and she was appointed by the governor to be the director of the Iowa Department of Human Rights. And so she was over, you know, children and family, the Commission on Status on Blacks, and Youth and Family Service, the Criminal Justice and Juvenile Services, and a few other agencies. You know, when Jesse Jackson ran for president and they had the Iowa caucuses, the caucus meeting was held in my grandmother's kitchen table, at my grandmother's dining room, like the same table that we had Sunday dinners. And so I grew up around that. And having her as my example. And I remember, something in the news, and it was an unjust murder of a Black man. And I just remember feeling like that's not right. And, from the time I could remember, I wanted to fight injustice. That was always what I wanted to do. And so I grew up saying I'm going to be an attorney because I want to stand up for women and youth and people of color and just injustice, period. That's always been a passion. Now, I took a different route because I was pursuing law, and, I ended up in DC working on the Hill. I worked for the Attorney General's office in DC in policy and training, and spending time in courtrooms and doing service in that way. Now, that was my plan. That wasn't God's plan. So I got rerouted. And so kind of going through that path, but coming into education, I came into education knowing that I was here to fight for justice. I knew the power and understood the power of education because, again, my grandparents were educators. And that was just always instilled in me, that to value your education. But one thing that my grandfather always told us was to take 2 sets of notes. You take 1 set of note to get an A, right? You give the teacher back whatever they told you, so they know you got it. But then you take another set of notes, and that's to get away, right? So take a set of notes to get an A, take a set of notes to get away, to keep your mind free, to know the truth. And for me, it is being an educator, it is not wanting my students to have to take 2 sets of notes. That we as educators, that is the integral role that we play in shaping the identities of our students, and also how they see the world and their place in the world and the power that they possess and the power that they have. And so I came into education ready to fight. And knowing that the power that we have as educators and what we have the ability to do. Now I believe I'm supposed to pass it to someone. Is there someone that needs passed to?
I can speak if no one else is jumping up. Okay, quickly. The reason why I became an activist, had to in my family. And it's just like with my daughter, she's 17 and I gave her the middle name of Alessandra, which means leader of the people. So she has to be an activist wherever she is. And that was a way that we had to be. I never, ever got spanked. I rarely even got yelled at. My dad was always smooth and calm and cool. My mom was a yeller, kind of, sort of. But the thing is that if she heard that you didn't defend someone and speak up, then she was livid. There was, just you had to defend people. There's a little bit of codependency, though, but I've learned how to work it out, and I am a defender of my people, very much so. In San Diego, if you don't speak up, you'll get pushed down. And I am like Issa Rae. I root for all things Black, unapologetically Black. And if somebody, what I always pride myself in doing is somebody comes up and tells me something, I don't just listen and shake my head and say, wow, that's awful. I always try to work on a solution because many times I see where people are like, yeah, that's awful. And then they don't work towards anything. So it's in me. It makes me cringe not to do it. And then think of my population of students. They're always the underserved. They're always, people want to blame them. And I'm like, but what if we're not teaching right? What if we're not serving them what they need? So I have my population I work for. And then last thing, the reason why I became an activist in the union is because very involved in community things in San Diego, junior NAACP, my sorority, just Association of African American Educators. Reason why I had to be that, because our union was a very white male dominated organization. They had these bully guys. And I was like, I know you're not gonna bully me. I'm 5'10". What are you doing here? And so we had to do a lot of things to work with them and make them understand. The name that they gave for me was Uppity N. I'm not going to say it. And it ended with a hard R, not an A. And I was like, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. But I deserve a space too. So I have to always, I think I said, Robert Ellis is in here. I said, I always feel like all my life I had to fight, but that's okay. you know? So I'm gonna start doing my yoga again and start walking and get rid of the stressors with that though. And I was always taught to question authority. I don't have oppositional defiance, but I always like when people just give pat, simplistic answers, I'm like, but why? So that brings about activism within itself too. I am going to choose Miss Estella.
Thank you, Penny. Like a lot of folks, I think Angela said it definitely started young. And I guess I want to start with saying I don't think I ever had the luxury to not consider myself an activist. And the last couple of weeks, I've been talking to my students about like what would it mean if we were like free to dream, and what does that look like? So I don't think I ever had the luxury to not be one, especially since I stepped into the role as an educator. But I do remember as a kid, I grew up at a small private school in South LA, predominantly Black, and I had this teacher in the 6th grade. And one day he was walking around class singing James Brown, "This Is a Man's World." Now I'm in 6th grade. I don't know what that song. I don't know that song. I didn't know it. But I was just like, excuse me, I don't like that phrase, like that, like "this is a man's world." There's like half girls in this class. Like I was really bothered. And he was like, "Well, it's true. Name a woman that's important in history." And I was like, "Excuse you?" Of course, the first one that come to mind was Rosa Parks. So I said Rosa Parks, and he was like, "Oh, she was just a tired old hag, and she just needed to sit down." And I was like, "Oh no, he didn't." I was like, "Excuse me, I need to go to the restroom." And I excused myself from the bathroom. I went straight to our principal's office, who was a Black woman. And I said, "Excuse me, Miss Richard, I need to tell you what Mr. Moore just said to me." And so, of course, she is just as livid as I am. And so she's like, "Let's go have a conversation with him." We went and she had to calm me down just to get me to go back to class because I was not okay. And I was like, "We really need to have like a parent teacher conference. We need to like work this out because I can't be in his classroom if this is how he's going to talk to the girls in the room." And he ended up challenging me to write a paper. And I can't remember if I wrote the paper on Rosa, I feel like I probably wrote something on Ella Baker because at the time she was like my icon. And so I brought back this like dossier, like this dissertation on women in the civil rights movement and women in the Black liberation movement. And so he was like, "Oh, okay, I guess." But all I remember was a couple weeks later, he wasn't our teacher, and we had a new teacher from Morehouse who just moved to LA from Atlanta. And the rest of 6th grade was was different. And so I remember the moments like that. I was fighting our school. The girls weren't allowed to play basketball for a little bit. And I was like, why don't we have 2 teams? There are plenty of girls who can play. And I remember fighting that fight too, trying to get the girls on the flag football team. Like there was just anywhere someone told me a girl couldn't do something, I was like, "Oh, well, hold my chocolate milk. Let me show you that girls can do something." And that definitely, speaks to like why initially I wanted to go into law. And I'm very like glad that I found my way to the classroom because just like so many have already said, that's the space where I get to ask but why and push students and allow them the space and time to also question me and say but why, and push back and demand a learning environment that is worthy of like all that they are and want to be. I'm going to pass it now to Miss Shelly.
That's why Estella's daughter is the way she is, exactly for what she just brought up.
I actually thought I was coming to the classroom to teach. I thought I was going to come in and fulfill my destiny and be a teacher and expound some wonderful knowledge. That didn't last very long. I came into teaching with DARE program that was supposed to revolutionize it teach kids about drugs and alcohol, and we're just going to get them all together, and the character education. And I couldn't figure out why even with these wonderful programs, that we were still having, that people were still having issues with kids, and they were still not able to connect with my kids, with the kids that I know very well and can respond to. And even to the point of a teacher coming up to me, or a parent coming up to me and saying, thank you so much for the grades that you gave my son. And I'm like, thank you, because they weren't probably the best that he could do. And she said, but no, his 2 years ago, his teachers gave him all A's and B's. And I just kind of stopped. And she said she was offended by that's all that teacher could do for him was just give him A's and B's. And it's not to say that he maybe didn't deserve them, but it was that he wasn't expected to give that. He wasn't expected to give that kind of work towards her. So just gave him A's and B's because she didn't want anybody to come back to her. And so I began to focus on the relationship and connecting with my students. And it changed everything that I did. Because if I was just simply out there to just tell them how wonderful I am and what all that I learned in my wonderful school years, then I lost them. And they had nothing to do with me. But if I could connect with them and say, what's it that you need? If I wanted to spend time in the community and doing some home visits and showing up to your house, Miss Gupton's coming to the house today? I'll be there. I'll stop by. We're gonna have a little visit. Well, why are you walking home with us? Oh, no reason. I just wanted to stop by and see how things were. How you doing? And those kinds of things made a difference to when they came back to the classroom. Even to the time, and wouldn't do it now, but saying, I'm going to take out everyone in my class. I'm going to take out 2 or 3 kids at a time and take them out. Again, not now. That was a few years ago. But it was permission with parents. And that brought on more of a relationship with them and more of a connection with them than I could ever do by opening a book or teaching them what I thought they needed to learn. And so that kind of guided me into standing up for them, just being able to say, tell me what it is that's on your heart and tell me what's on your mind. And I could see in sometimes in the classroom situations where there would be students, especially young ladies in other classrooms, and they come hang out in my classroom. They come in and talk to me because they said that this person's going to listen to me. And it's not that they didn't like or appreciate what the other teachers were doing for them, but they felt that connection. And they felt that was somebody that really was there for them and going to listen to them. And that made me want to stand up and listen to more and do more for my students.
Powerful sharing, everyone. The level to which you all harnessed your power to enact change is inspirational, but don't get it twisted. There have been obstacles that we've all faced. So I want to give everyone an opportunity to share out what are some of the obstacles that you faced in your activism work.
All right, I'm going to jump in.
Okay.
So I think one of the things is as an activist, the first person who put up obstacles in my way was myself. And I think that's something that we need to really understand and work through. So I grew up being bullied. I grew up being the only Black child. I grew up in a very white space in Kentucky, right? So I grew up thinking that my voice had to be white in order to be right. So the first step to my activism was actually untangling my own oppression. That was the first thing I needed to do. And once I had that conversation with myself, it actually then helped me to become more of a disruptor than a person who actually gets pushed back by obstacles, right? So I think that's that's definitely the biggest thing for me. Of course, there's been people who've blocked me and told me I was never good enough. And the thing is, when you get to that point as an adult, I heard it all as a child. And then I told myself as an adult that didn't, I was better than that. So when you're coming at me as an adult telling me that I'm not good enough and and my voice doesn't matter, I've already worked through that to where my confidence is up to where, nope, I'm sorry, I actually know my voice matters. So I would have to say, in order for me to become unapologetically Black, I had to realize I was unapologetically Black. And that has actually helped me bust through obstacles more than actually succumb to them. And I'll pass it on to whoever wants to go next.
I think I'll jump in. I think the obstacles are endless. there's always somebody who wants to be in your way, stop the conversation, slow down progress. Like there's always there's a Nigerian like proverb, like enemy of progress, like all the time, enemy of progress. And that, so I'm gonna just let that sit because I know that other folks are gonna speak to it on the panel. One, I'm thinking about like healing and support in the same way that I feel like I have never had the luxury to not be an activist. I also don't feel like I've had the luxury or found a place where healing is the norm. Where like that, where we're just at this place of peace. I don't know what that looks like. And I'm still looking for it, but I will say what has helped overcome the obstacles or at least bypass them sometimes is people, right? Like, and it is this group here, like several of the women who are on this panel have been the women who have held me up through my, 7-8 years in the classroom and as I've emerged in CTA as a leader. Two of my, I love being able to say that my president is a Black woman. Two of my presidents are on this panel, right? I was formerly of CVSTA. Dr. Brame is my former president, and now Cecily is my president. Like that. So the women have been my support structure through all of it, through all of this. And so I am like sad to say, I still don't know what that healing looks like, what that space feels like, but also fortunate to say that I have found my people, like through this educator activism work.
I'll jump in. Appreciate that. I think what Erica says is true, and then it's just backed up by what Estella brings forward. Yeah, Black people are exhausted, not because we're tired, not because we're lazy, it's because we have to go through minefields of white supremacy on a daily basis. And so if I show up in a space where I'm not having a smile, don't think that that's anger. I'm thinking about stuff, and there's a lot of things to think about. How many obstacles are going to be in my way at my workplace? What internal and external pressures do I have to field? How do I have to monitor my tone? And that's the part when we talk about being unapologetically Black. I also am looking for people to understand that I'm also a human being, and that just like other people cry, I want to cry too. Just like other people are tired, I am tired too. And I don't know that folks understand the reality of how you show up unapologetically Black every single day is so exhausting. And I need folks to understand that there's dignity in being who we are, especially as Black leaders. But I feel like there's some type of discount to that because, like, put a smile on your face, do this, do that. Are you saying that to the other folks? Are you saying that to other people? Because it's exhausting being a Black person, a Black woman, a Black queer woman, like all of the things that we embody to be able to walk into the door is exhausting. And when we have to conform to other folks' standards. Like, I'm not a performative artist. Like, I want to come as I am, unapologetically Black into the space, and you welcome me in that space as I am.
I think we're just going to add on, right? Because that's what I'm saying. But I think one of the things is not always necessarily the blocks or, leadership per se, but it's the microaggressions that we endure every single day from our colleagues. And the feeling of isolation, right? We have a lot of strong Black women in this space, but this is not what it looks like on our campuses. This isn't what it looks like in our locals, even, or at least not my local, Estella. But I think if I've had my colleagues come up to me and say, "What are you?" Right? Trying to figure out my ethnic identity. Or saying, finding out, that my mother is white, right? And go, "Oh, well, that's why you're so beautiful." As to imply that if my mother wasn't white, that I wouldn't be beautiful. Like I've had other educators say those things to me, that I had a head wrap on one day and she said, "Oh, you look so ethnic today." It's those, and I can't get upset because I don't want to be accused of creating a hostile work environment, right? And I have to keep a smile on my face, and I can't be the angry Black woman, and I can't break down and cry, and I can't not smile, because then you think, it's having to that mental, like Cecily said, like having to navigate landmines. Literally every single thing that comes out of my mouth, every facial expression that I make, every tone. I can't use and I have to keep doing this because I can't talk with my hands because then I'm too aggressive, right? It's all of those things that we are constantly policing ourselves because we are fully conscious of how we are perceived in the world, but specifically within education and amongst our union leaders and amongst our colleagues. So I would say those are some of the obstacles. It's the microaggressions and the feeling of isolation on a daily basis that we endure.
Okay, I think I'm going to jump in and just do some bullets really quickly. Anti-Black feelings within my but not my local, because I've worked it. They're used to me. I've been there for 30 years. They're okay somewhat, and they're learning how to be anti-racist. But I'm learning how to work with CTA, and perfunctory support. I talked about that when people are like, yeah, and then they don't follow up on it. Well-meaning progressives who believe that they are Blacker than I, and they're going to tell me how to be. One time I came in with my hair straight. It's been so long though now. And one of the progressives asked me, "Do you feel less Black when your hair is straight?" I was like, I'm not even gonna deal with you. Let's see, non-courageous Black folk. Actually, you know what though? Non-courageous anybody, because I'm always willing to go out on a limb. I'm always willing to speak up for the spoken up for a person. But someone who is not courageous, that blocks me, and then blocks my, what I want to do, because they're saying, you might need to hold back. You might want to wait on that. That I think that's about it. That those are the basic obstacles, because I really do believe that I can do anything if left to my powers, and if someone will tell me what I'm supposed to be doing, or if I read up on it and I'm allowed to implement it. But people block you by certain ways, like you said, the microaggressions, or actually the macroaggressions, So, and I hope that we get to talk about the anti-Black feeling that I feel within CTA, but I don't know if we're going to get that time. That might need to be a whole nother meeting. But that's about it, though. Thank you.
Ditto to all of that from everyone.
Yeah.
I think my realization came when I think I was shopping in Target. I saw a card and it said, "The struggle is real." I had no one to send the card to. And then I sent an email to Cecily and I got a reply, and her signature said, "The struggle is real." And I said, Jesus, I am not alone here.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate being in this space with all of you. And ditto to everything that you all have lifted up as a struggle, because the struggle is real.
In our last 5 minutes together, I know we only have 5 minutes left now. I want to hear, where have you found healing and support? Some of us already hinted at that, but I want to end on a more positive note to give us a tool, a morsel to hang on to. So where have you found healing and support?
Black women, actual Black women who share the struggle, and just a healing space, just holding space with Black women.
Black women on this here screen.
Absolutely.
Who and not on the screen, but who saw me and said, "You come here." Actually, Cecily did that. She was like, "You come here," but did that in a loving way in order to say, "I see it in you, and I'm going to help develop this in you."
And these types of spaces, I know that we have a lot more people with us, but sometimes it feels, there have been times this hour that it feels like it's just us talking. And, you know, Cecily was talking about that just that space where I can just be, and you can just be, and we can just be together and just talking with each other and conversing. Those are spaces of healing. We get it sometimes with our family. You can just be yourself. We don't have to go back and forth. We don't have to figure out how we say it. We can just say it. And it's nice to have those opportunities. They help so much get through the micro and macro aggressions.
I got to jump in and just say, every single one of these panelists, I think I've approached. When I go to CTA meetings now, when I see a Black face, I'm so happy. I smile at everybody. I try to get everybody's phone number. I don't know if people think I'm hitting on them or whatever, but I've been married for almost 30 years. I don't want nobody here. You guys do not know. You do not know how much, like, I go and see Angela and she got a scarf on like she's freezing at every conference, or I see Cicely over there holding, court or whatever, or you guys do not know. Wow, you guys make me sometimes want to cry, and I don't cry, so that's interesting, but you don't know how much the support is. And then along with that, I do have a strong support within my community. Like a lot of the community leaders, I had to go back to some Black activists and say, what do you do with the progressives who are really well-meaning, but are out of place or whatever? And, I've been talking to a lot of leaders and politicians and stuff like that. But for CTA work, you women on this panel have been helpful to me, and you might not know it, but you make a great impact.
I would have to add, ditto to what everyone said. I think it's always really powerful for me, and someone had said it earlier, like it fills my cup when I'm around like Black women that I can just exhale with, because you just get it, right? I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to put on airs or anything like that, right? I can just be me. I think the other thing though that brings me healing has recently, I've really been connecting with like my elders, like from my parents to, and just hearing stories, but also just this understanding that this work may not be finished this generation. And if you and with me thinking that it's going to take, my family's real big on 7 generations out, right? Like if you really want to see things happen, you've got to right, what you do today is for 7 generations out. And I think that's been really helpful for me, because I just get so bogged down that things are not moving fast enough, that we still have generations of students going through the same stuff we went through as students, right? The same stuff our parents went through as students, and so that really helps me become centered. But also like talking through that with Black women has also, helped, like talking through all that and understanding that there is change we can actually do now and we can impact now. So definitely.
And so I just want to make the comment, being I'm just going to say the senior person here or the seasoned person here. I'm just really inspired, and I just want to shed a few tears, but I'm not. But I'll just say this much. Just to be on a panel with all of you and to see all the growth that you all have made, and to know when you came on council, whatever, this is just really exciting for me. And it shows there's been a lot of growth here. And I just hope that it continues on. So somebody's doing something right. I mean, I first met Penny at a conference. She was talking. I mentioned the RA, never heard of the RA, and some other things. And whatever I told her, I saw her the next year. She was on council and at the RA. Watch Cecily as she went through her process. So from the chrysalis until to the butterfly, it's happening. So I'm just hoping that, you know, we continue to mentor and bring others along for the future, because if we don't, we're going to lose this history. We are. Thank you.
You panelists are the embodiment of Toni Morrison's quote, "If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else." Each of you has benefited like my trajectory within this activism work, as well. As I was saying, second grade Camille didn't think activism, but now because of you, it is part of who I am. And to all our attendees and CTA staff, your participation here in this space for today's CTA Tuesday Takeovers for Social Justice and Racial Justice, titled Unapologetically Black, a conversation about our history, our present, our future, is valued and appreciated. And it sounds like we need to have more of these. So until next time, I want y'all to take care of yourselves, take care of your communities, and continue to do the work.